But recently, opposition between those who decry pop culture and those who revel in it has become testy. And increasingly, critics or artists who hate on pop culture are called snobs. Which makes us wonder, what is the function of snobs today?
Why are we talking about them in terms of function?
Well, and also just like we just went from,
negativity.
you got two people fighting, one that says media is worse than ever and one that says media is fucking amazing. The amazing people call the everything sucks people snobs, and the question is, do we need snobs? He's like, well, wait, but are they? You just said
Are
the
they
people who hate
snobs?
them called them snobs. Like, I don't even
Or
know
the
that.
people who hate them wrong, or are they just being silly?
Yeah, because like snob is definitively a negative trait. Like you wouldn't.
Yeah.
That's never used as a
Strictly
positive.
pejorative.
Yeah. The nice version, one would say, of snob would just be like discerning, I guess, or critical.
Discerning, sophisticated, blah blah blah.
But this implies.
Cultured.
Well, it's
Yeah.
like if this video could have just been the negative people are calling the positive people shills. Do we need shills? It's like, well, it depends.
This
Like,
video sponsored by BetterHelp.
Are snobs just haters who want to infringe on my God-given right to enjoy watching Tony Stark eat shawarma? Would we be better
Well,
off with
how do they infringe on your ability to enjoy it? How does
exactly.
that manifest?
What
does
is it-
that
Are
mean?
you
Such a
upset
stupid
that you
statement.
can be
Does it
influenced
mean
by
that
the
they
opinions
tell
of other
Does
people?
it mean that they tell you things that are convincing and then lower your opinion of something because of
That's
that?
just-
Okay.
how dare you take
That's
my
just
feelings?
communication.
I'm
That's
just
just being a
reeling
human.
I'm reeling from where we're proceeding from because he's talking about them in terms of like social utility and whether or not they are a necessary part of that. I don't know how you can talk about any like sociological phenomenon in that regard because it's just going to be the case.
Well, yeah, they're an
Yeah,
inevitability.
it is a naturally emergent element of people communicating ideas about art. You can't not have it.
He
Your
acts like he's-
opinion will be influenced by others' opinions.
It's like he's talking about a city builder where like snobs are a thing that you can have in your city that like provide a certain function. It's,
Yeah,
it's
but
like
don't you
whether or not you
snobs,
should
though?
invest in snobs.
Invest in snobs. They bring
What's the
culture
snob
up, but
budget
they
on this
bring the
project?
overall happiness down.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't
Will
like
we-
the infringing thing. It reminds me of that like quit having fun meme where there's a bunch of people trying to like enjoy something and there's a guy in the room like, "Hey, stop it." Like these people are standing in the way of your TV just by like not liking something that you like. It's like you're free to enjoy the thing. Nobody's stopping you.
It's weird
The
as hell.
thing with
If you have a tweet that's literally just someone saying like, "I saw a new movie, thought it was bad, thought that blah 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 blah," then someone responds to that with like, "Just let people enjoy things." Like, I didn't even know. Who even are you? I'm just talking about what I thought.
Yeah.
The thing I've always found interesting about those sorts of memes is they're always like a few people in a room, and how do you expand that out to understand what the room is in like a larger sense? Like, would the room be Twitter?
Right.
For these people, yes.
And that's where the conversation is taking place. In which case, like, it's a completely different mode of social engagement. Mr. Twitter is not there while you're playing the game. he's,
always
not,
such
Yeah.
he's not real.
It's always such a
Yeah.
fragile like mindset too, to be like, if I'm exposed to people who don't like the thing, it might affect how much I like it. You're like, oh man, don't worry,
You're
that's
just
okay.
desperate to hold on to an emotion. Then that's what it means.
Yeah, instead you should be pursuing like, hey man, let's see if my experience, rendered into what I would call my perspective on how I got there stands up to someone else's exact same process. See how they compare. That's like the interesting part of what we might call discussion, as opposed to, please don't speak, it could affect me.
Well, it's the confusion, and people like often, I think, mistake that distinction between the private and the public sphere. Lots of these people would have no trouble meeting a group of friends to actually talk about the thing they really like, and all the friends would really like it, and that's in a private room, in their own living room. They've just watched the film. They all say, "Oh, how great that was." But then they go on social media, Twitter, YouTube, and they kind of treat it as though the same standard should apply. They're allowed to stick out a tweet, a post, a comment, whatever, saying this thing was brilliant. And that's fine. But as soon as someone who is in the public sphere, because you're speaking to fucking the whole world, says, no, it wasn't good, it was actually quite shit, they get very offended because in their minds it seems to just be an extension of their own living room. They think that all of the world should allow them to have the private space, which encompasses all of social media, which is not how social media works and never will be. It's like my favorite people are the ones who turn up in like a comment section under one of my videos saying, why do you not want people to have fun? Just let people enjoy things. It's like, but you clicked
You
on this
came
video
here.
to leave that comment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not invading your living room telling you this is shit. I'm on YouTube. You don't have to watch
Listen,
my video.
The algorithm made him do it.
Yeah, even if I'm
Yeah,
in your
it's not
algorithm,
their
you don't have to
fault.
click.
Right.
Well,
I think you do have to, though. You have to click. You
on
simply
that
must. There is
notion,
no escape.
Soda Chat said the complete lack of awareness from Mauler. The point is that some people are saying I like X, and they get dogpiled by folks telling them X sucks, and often personal insults. That's not
What
what
about
this
the people
section
saying they
is.
don't
That's
like X?
Yeah,
that's
they
not what this
didn't
section's
say
about.
that.
That's not what he said.
Yeah,
He's-
we haven't heard that yet.
He's talking
in this video.
about the notion of snobbery and whether or not it should exist, and how he just said, maybe I just want to like the Avengers eating shawarma, as if that has anything to do with someone expressing they didn't like something. And secondly, why did you say
Also,
lack of self-awareness? As if you mean lack of like perception of the video, right? Unless you're saying that I dogpile people, which I don't think I do. I feel like I'm mostly fine with anyone enjoying or disliking anything, really. Like, you know, in the specific circumstance, it could be kind of annoying depending on what media we're talking about and the consequences of such things. But I mean, broadly speaking, I don't really care. I just want to break things down. And if someone's not interested in that discussion, so be it.
also, if you like something and people are saying you're stupid for liking it, but you don't think they're right, just grow up and move on with your life. Like, you don't have to listen to them. You don't have to regard their opinions as valuable. You can just go, no, I like it, and I think you're wrong.
Well, and
It's really not that hard.
we're gonna run up soon against the old standard subtext that no one likes to admit, which is that it's okay to like stuff. It's not really okay to dislike stuff. Generally,
Oh boy,
Yeah,
our old
Right.
friends.
super annoying.
very
Better
true.
off without them, or do they serve a cultural function?
Better off without them. What are you gonna
Function.
We gotta take all the snobs and throw them into the poop dimension.
Like it was mentioned, Thanos them into the poop dimension.
Yeah. I like the idea that we could get rid of them if we wanted to.
Why are we talking about
Yeah.
like
If only we had the balls.
a non-specific, like incredibly vague social demographic, I guess, in terms of social function? Why are you thinking this way? I really don't get it.
Well, yeah, because
Let's
you need
find
to
out.
really narrow down what precisely you think a snob is before you can even start talking about what social
Sure
function.
Whether we
you
should
want
get
to
rid of
have.
them.
Very clearly.
Wait, yes, he's the personification of the military-industrial complex. Are you talking about Iron Man? In the bottom right there, can you see that?
The man who decided he's not going to make weapons
The man who
anymore?
decided that he would not, in fact.
You know what?
be
Let's.
the-
You know what?
You know what? We can't get distracted. We can't.
Yeah.
This is madness. We have to. We can't let that.
You gotta one thing at a time.
Would we
Really
be
can't
better
be-
Canadian literacy.
Eyes on the prize.
off without them, or do they serve a cultural function? Let's find out in this Wisecrack
Let's find
edition.
out.
Do we need snobs? In order to understand the
my
modern
God.
clash over popular culture and snobbery, we first need to understand the 19th.
Is there anyone
not a
out there
modern
who
thing.
self-identifies as a snob and like that's a positive trait of mine? Anyone?
I do.
Yes, I do.
Sexually.
I guess so.
The point I was going to
My
make is
fucking avatar
that
is wearing a turtleneck and swilling wine. I can't really identify as anything else, unfortunately.
do we need snobs though? I'm imagining broadly the people who would be shouted for being a snob would be like, no, I'm not. And, as in, like, how are we identifying the snobs here? Is it the people who love everything are going to tell us?
Well, the snob is obviously a derogatory term, but I'm sure like there's plenty of people who I think would willingly accept the identity that there's someone who has like high culture tastes, you know.
I
Like
think-
they're enlightened and like good things and they have discernment and all that.
I think that's absolutely correct, but if they were forced in a serious discussion to describe themselves as overly critical for the sake of coming across as like with a person with better taste because they like feeling above other people or something like that, they would be like, no, I don't consider
Yeah,
myself.
they wouldn't admit to the like superiority part, probably. Well,
Yeah.
maybe they would. I don't know.
Maybe, I guess.
Little Platoon, do you think you're better than everyone else?
Yes,
I
obviously.
knew you would say that.
Yeah.
19th century
I've got
origin of the wall between
I've got a pet peeve here, just real quick. I'm getting very tired of the phrasing in a lot of these like dime a dozen video essays. In order to understand X, we first need to go into Y. That absolutely is not relevant.
No, yeah,
No,
you
we
could just
have
be
to
talking
hear what
about why
Karl
already.
Marx has to say about any
Carlton
given
Marx.
topic.
Here he goes.
Like, first off, We don't. Second, even if we did, you were not going to give me the necessary basis of understanding in order to create the kind of understanding you want me to have for X. You haven't given yourself enough time for that. This is an 18-minute video.
With ads.
Also, his
and
description
preamble.
of X is just like abjectly retarded. He calls it like a modern phenomenon that some people don't like pop culture. It's like, really?
Like I
You
said
think
to you, in
that's
order to
new?
in order to
like how we
talk about
started off.
apples, we first need to understand the concept of fruit. Do we? I don't know that we do.
And then we first need to understand the concept of carbon, and you're like,
But how are atoms formed? For that, we need to go back to the Big Bang.
Pop culture and high culture. Now, snob initially meant of the ordinary or lower classes, typically folks lacking a college education. Though the meaning has flipped today, with snobbery now associated with consumers of highbrow art, its association with class remains strong. English poet and social critic.
See, like, I think it's strange to say that
actually
it's.
get that. In,
It means that it's like the consumer of high-end cultural art, whatever. It's like you'd have to include also that it's about a superiority complex. That's how it's always used. Like that they
That
think
is
themselves
exactly
superior.
the use.
yeah, I typically
Yeah,
don't get
like-
like class.
Nobody
vibes when
ever-
people say that. That's not what
Oh, it's
comes
just
to my
if
mind.
somebody has a genuine interest in, like, I don't know, sculptures or something, and they're like, man, I just really like sculptures. Nobody would be like, oh, you snob.
Well, and if you're
nobody would have
introducing
that
a
attitude.
friend's interests who mainly watches, let's say, indie films or French films, art films, whatever, you'd say that. You wouldn't say, oh, this is my snob friend. He likes snobs films.
Exactly.
I call him like
Snob
a film
has
buff.
to-
Unless he was
Snob
a
has to
Yeah,
dude.
film
describe
buff
the
would be another
attitude.
word.
Yeah, exactly. If he was being a jerk, then that's
I'm a
it's the
cinephile.
attitude.
Cinephile.
Oh my god.
I like to fuck movies.
Matthew Arnold is often considered to have founded the study of high culture.
We're looking at old photographs. We're doing it.
I was
We're
about
looking
to
at old
say we're doing the
This
meme.
means
We're
that my-
doing it.
This means that my arguments are
This,
good.
dude. We
Look,
don't
by the way-
want this.
We
at
first
his
need to go
mug
back to the
shot.
creation
it,
of the
look, they're
fucking word.
massive. Oh,
Look
bring
at
him
how
back.
look at
Bring
how
him
smart
back.
I am.
I will say
People have never written an essay in school, man.
we I don't think we'll ever beat. It was Brown Table, right? Who did he was like, we're talking about what makes the difference between good and bad art. Then he says, now let's talk about Karl Marx. It was
This reminds me of Karl Marx.
it was the funniest shit. I don't think we'll ever beat that.
English poet and social critic Matthew Arnold is often considered to have founded the study of high culture versus pop culture. He was hostile to the latter. He wanted his compatriots to aim higher than the commercial culture that thrived in taverns, which he compared to anarchy. Arnold believed that art criticism should be a disinterested endeavor to learn and propagate the best that is known and thought in the world, and thus to establish a current of fresh and true ideas.
We should get this going, EFAP.
Interested endeavor.
Yeah, that's sure, I guess.
Matthew Arnold is really interesting,
Well,
and he has lots of
yeah.
interesting things to say about this subject. But like, he doesn't coin this distinction either. It's the same distinction that you go back to Plato. If we can get like a nice, just a static image of Plato, which slowly zooms in because this is now a really smart podcast.
Yep.
What Plato
get to
draws
it.
this distinction between art, which is like mimetic art, which misleads people. Is the reason he kicks all of his poets out of his republic, is because he thinks that they are appealing to people's base sentimentality and misleading them from what is good and what is true. And high art forms, which are things which lead you toward the form of truth. This has always been a dynamic in human reception of art. So props to him for knowing who Matthew Arnold is, I guess, but it's not really helping his argument.
Yeah, it is. I'm
His
understanding
name popped
snobs
up
more and
whenever he
more.
googled something.
I just
In
don't
this
believe
way-
for a second any of this is going anywhere.
It never does.
I
I'm
truly
going to be given a really, really shitty cursory history lesson that won't actually tell me anything of substance about the history of this term, and then he's going to tell me his opinion.
I have completely now associated bad, long preamble nonsense with you. Like it's just whenever it happens, I just think about like, Thea's suffering somewhere.
And
We're
that
not
brings
even
me
watching the
to
video, but he's suffering so
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
Critics could educate and humanize folks who Arnold pretty rudely called the Philistines. Importantly, with the rise of mass industrialization and commercial culture, pop culture would be defined by financial accessibility. Maybe you couldn't afford a ticket to the ballet, but you could read a mass-produced Penny Dreadful novel like Varney the Vampire, The Feast of Blood. So in one way, snobbery is a refined
Sounds great.
sense of aesthetic
I'd give it a
appreciation
try.
that challenges culture to produce high-quality art. On the other hand, snobbery has long involved the upper class using culture to signify superiority. So which view is right?
Sorry?
What? Sorry,
we were setting up a dichotomy as to which one was the correct opinion. Oh,
I didn't realize that moved to it.
I didn't.
He said what?
Which one is right?
That's like a 5-year-old is in this conversation right now. You tell him about like, oh, there's a couple of different views on this thing, and he says, which one's the right one?
I don't know, man. I feel like it's more complex than that.
What a fucking
I hate-
uninteresting way of viewing the conversation itself as well. Also,
that's a bizarre question.
because I'm annoyed with this now, so that history lesson tells me about the prior usage of the term, a term that has evolved because language adapts with use. Snob doesn't mean the same thing to me in my social context as it meant to Matthew
No,
in
but
his social context.
You have to understand, because it was tethered to class at one point, it still is, because history is
You've got to fucking
History's a
historical
loop.
context and
you've
society.
prove that.
You
That's
have to-
history is
no,
flat.
No, that's just
You
how it
could've-
works.
He could have actually been working to try and establish how there are still classes.
Big Mad
towards
Theo,
the
read a
term.
book.
Yeah.
No, you can never
Very-
divorce from historical context. You can't do that. It's not possible.
Dude,
Even
Whatever
if you don't-
Karl
even
Marx
if you're
said
not
is the
using
correct
it in its
opinion,
historical
whatever.
Context, you're still using it in its historical context because you live in society.
I kind of
Right.
just like the notion he does this with everything. Like, he finishes reading Lord of the Rings, puts it down, just goes, so, who was right?
The correct answer was Sauron. Sauron was correct.
Specifically, Gollum was correct, actually.
Gollum won the argument. True, that's right.
Philosopher Matthew Kieran characterizes
Oh my
snobs
God.
Another dead man. Jesus Christ.
Oh my god.
It's the dead Avengers.
Piling up in the streets.
I don't believe
picture of
for a second you have read any material by this individual.
Well, he probably actually hasn't. I don't know if he does the script right. The script person's different than the him.
Yeah, but who
The
knows if the
script
script person
person
even
only-
like read a whole
No.
book or just found like something like a
They
quote
Googled
Blinkist
and-
version.
Yeah.
No,
They
they Googled the
something,
topic,
yep.
and then they saw some names popped
I'm
up, and they were
sorry,
like, "Ooh, I could slide this in."
You triggered me a little bit by reminding me of Blinkist as
Yep,
like a,
yep.
a-
It's one of the worst things that's ever been
I
made.
remember, I think I got an ad where someone's like, "Oh, I've read 20 books thanks to Blinkist," and like that statement drove me mad. The
Yeah,
idea
you've
that
read
you
0
the
books
book-
thanks to Blinkist is
you
the
read the
correct
book because
phrase.
you read a summary of the book. Like,
That's so
my
wrong.
God.
So
It
wrong.
is so wrong, and it's you know, you want to talk about like the commodity, like turning art into a commodity. The idea of like, yeah, it's a checklist. Yep, I've read that book. Yeah, I've read that book. I've read that book because of a 10-minute summary. Awesome. Like that, you've totally missed the point of why all of the words that are in that book were put in that
Dude,
book.
The person who
well,
like
the summary-
reads Lord of the Rings through Blinkist and then asks ChatGPT to run down the themes and then just read it out.
It was
Like,
right.
who was
Oh,
right?
God.
Art is dead and we killed it.
Okay.
as
We're
more
going to
concerned
need
about seeing-
snobs to preserve.
To
Like the
preserve
actual-
actually like consuming the art instead of just consuming
I think-
summaries of the art. From
I think this
AI.
is what I'm learning. We need people to be like, you know what? Actually learning how to play the violin is a virtuous and good thing. Actually reading a book or watching an opera in its entirety, maybe those are things that are worthy endeavors to pursue. Not just, ooh, ChatGPT said it was A-okay.
When we get cyborg arms that are programmable with like hyper expert violinist and then the person plays it in front of you and they're like, what do you think? And you're just like, I mean, yeah, sounds good.
It'd be cooler
Yeah,
if you
find
did.
it
It'd be cool if you
cheating, though.
did. And they're like, well, I'm not very good at it on my
It
own,
wasn't-
but with my cyborg arms, I'm excellent. You're like, oh, that's interesting that you
Alright.
described it that way.
Interesting.
Fine.
I'm triggering myself again. It's like the idea with something like that, the idea of something like Blinkist, like, oh, give me the meaning of this. Just package the meaning of whatever it is that I'm supposed to be reading. Just package it and present it to me, rather than allowing me to absorb the meaning of it from actually like reading the creation. I think that drives me
Well,
crazy.
hence
Like,
breakdowns
yeah,
of like
just-
things we like. We tell everyone, go watch it, go watch it, go watch it, go watch it. Don't listen to us first.
Yeah, because there's a difference between watching it and having it presented to you. I mean, in part because it's coming from that person's particular perspective, but also because it's not the same experience.
the artistry is in how they're conveying the meaning they want to
Exactly.
get across. I can just tell you, yeah, life's worth living, man. But that's not gonna
Thumbs up.
There's a difference between saying that and experiencing it viscerally through the storytelling.
That is Theo's one-page
Don't
book,
kill
and he sets
yourself.
it down and says, "So, who was right? Was life worth living or not?"
Well, if you asked me that before this fucking video, I might have answered differently, but
Characterizes snobs as more concerned about seeming cultured and intelligent than about engaging with actual work. He claims that a snobbish judgment or
Okay.
response is one where aesthetically
Oh, this is a modern philosopher.
He's not dead.
Look, it's in
I
color.
assume.
Wow.
This picture's in
Yeah,
color.
he's got a hoodie on under his
wait.
blazer.
I
That
was
means
about
he's
to say,
young
there's
and
no
hip.
way we're just gonna not address that. This fucking asshole in front of his stupid blue wall is just like, oh, I'm gonna put this blazer over my hoodie and look away.
Correct. What is the
Stupid blue
represent?
wall.
It reminds me how fucking sad I am to see that people wear this. They even put a blazer over a hoodie.
Oh,
That is.
he was a professor at
interest-
the university I did my master's at. Huh.
Oh wow.
I just
Oh.
looked him up.
So
Well-
he's your fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I would
I
say,
wasn't
by the
paid for
way,
salary.
a blazer,
so,
a hoodie combo is absolutely like a hipster snob sort of thing to do. I'd say.
Absolutely.
So this guy
I'm
knows.
professional, but also casual and cool.
This guy knows what's up. He knows what a
I
snob
don't know
is.
why
sit
that feels
backwards
like
in
a Family Guy joke.
It
Like-
does.
Oh wait, it was that one of the stock photos? The stock photos like where the professor is giving the class outside, and it's just a picture
Yeah.
of them sitting on like the lawn outside of like in a university.
Matthew has moved from academic philosophy into mental health psychology.
Oh, better
I
help.
see.
So he
Yeah,
failed.
better help.
Oh, mental health, like that explains the fashion choices.
Just trying to look the guy up because this isn't a name I've heard.
irrelevant social
He's all yeah. That's what I said. He's also folding the arms, like kind of folded it.
He's looking away. He's folding the arms. He has ridiculous fashion.
He's got his blue fucking wall.
This stupid fucking blue wall.
What do you have against blue walls?
No, I like blue walls. The blue walls.
Is this like when the
Fine.
curtains are blue? Do we have to like analyze the meaning of why the
Yes.
wall is blue?
Yes.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's why I asked that earlier. Yep.
Ah,
What do
I
you think
see.
it means,
Ooh.
Theo?
I think it means he's probably quite upset because blue means sadness, and that's about it.
Hmm.
I think blue means calmness, and he's totally aloof as to the nature of his own blue wall. That's why it's so
He-
meaningful.
He
What,
does
is
look
Luke
like
about
you just
taking
said
the
that.
picture?
He does look like you just said that you liked a fairly popular film to him, and he just scoffed.
Well, I think Avengers Endgame is quite meaningful, actually. It's a really good
Oh my
experience.
features play a causal role in the subject's appreciative activity and coming to judge the value of X qua aesthetic object. In layman's terms,
Okay.
Hold on.
Now
you-
tell me what that means.
Holy
Wisecrack.
shit! Was there an easy way to say this?
Break it down for
Damn.
me, Wisecrack.
A snobbish judgment or response is one where aesthetically irrelevant social features play a causal role in the subject's appreciative activity in coming to judge the value of qua aesthetic objects.
Just like with respect to.
So
all
basically,
three.
a snob is somebody who cares how they're perceived when talking about art.
Should
That's
have
kinda
followed up
my
with
takeaway
basically
is
this
the-
sentence.
The social context plays a big role in whether or not something is or isn't considered snobbish.
Yeah, their judgments
Okay.
are principally concerned with how they want to present themselves to the world.
It's
I
like,
feel like we could have said that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
And
sure
about
he's
a
being,
fifth of the words.
being technically specific in the context of whatever he's writing for, but it's like the
Uh-huh.
person you mentioned who just likes sort of, 18th century sculpture or whatever. Like, he's not necessarily a snob about it unless he's doing it to seem smart to people around
Yeah,
him. You know
Which
what I mean?
then means, which leads to the question: if the wizard told you that the guy who you think is a snob, it's like, nah, he doesn't care about how he perceived. He genuinely means all of this. And the tone of voice that he's saying it in, it may seem like, again, he's trying to be perceived in a certain way, but like, this is how he genuinely feels. I guess that would mean that that person isn't a snob.
That's kind of what I was
Like
getting at.
Anton
with-
Ego
that's
is
the
not a
case.
snob.
Snob
He
is
really
almost
is,
All
exactly.
that stuff.
in the eye of the beholder. It's not like a definitive. It's so rare to have someone just be like, I am through and through a snob, correct? Because it's kind of like bad for your your traits to be a snob. Typically, anyway, with how we understand the the following aspects of it. But yeah, this reminds me of the smell woman, the smell study.
woman.
Who made the like
smell
and people were like, you have to read it and then you'll understand it's perfectly normal, and then you read it and it's some of the most snobbish fucking descriptions of how smells in history have defined class and race and sex. I don't know if any of you guys read that.
I know
Did see
of
a bit
it.
of that.
I know everyone. Yeah, I that was the talk of the day or whatever. I haven't read it. I think I read the abstract.
She's referred to
but
as
I
a
can't
doctor
remember
thanks
it.
to that.
You almost didn't
I
need to
am
read it
not
because you
sure,
could just
yeah.
look at her profile picture and you already like you immediately knew basically what you were going to get when you read
Was
the
she
summary
up
of the
against
thing.
the blue wall too?
I
I
think
don't
so.
think she was.
Well, it was just invisible, but I was told by like many people that it was like a bad read to make fun of her without reading the. I forget what the opening page was called. It was like
Yeah,
the-
abstract.
Generally, the abstract,
Abstract,
is
that's
like
it, yeah.
the yeah.
and I was just like, fair enough, and then I read it and I was like, nope, that's made it worse.
Hmm.
In layman's terms,
But at least you
a
read it. At least you know, because you never know. Because a lot of these
No, that's
studies are like because it really does make a difference. Yeah.
Snob is a poser who uses high-class signifiers not because they like them, but because saying they do affords them social currency.
What's the
they
degree?
have somewhere to
Okay,
be.
so a question, an important question is, yeah, but to what degree do they need to be aware that they're even doing this? What if you're talking to somebody who you could say subconsciously that's essentially what they're doing, but they don't even recognize it. They genuinely feel, or to a large degree feel, that the way that they talk and behave about art is earnest. Like,
Well,
you
And
know
they're
what I
not a
mean? Like, how
snob,
much
this is what I
something-
meant by
like, it's-
the relativity thing. If you trap two people who love film and one of them says, "What's your favorite?"
Oh,
kind
is
of
this one of the Mr. Beast games?
No. What's your favorite kind of shot?
Oh.
And then one of them's like, where all the when it has like all the people, and the other guy looks at him like, what? He's like, like a big shot of the camera with lots of, and then the other person's like, oh, what's in that case, right? That would be the opposite of a snob, like a fucking idiot sort of thing. But then if you flip it. And the guy says, like, what's your favorite thing about film? And he goes, it's got to be the shots, and names literally every shot ever in a row, and then says,
Wide
I
shot,
love
medium
all of
shot,
them.
close up.
Yeah, and it's
Touch
just
angle.
like, okay. That's not even, what were you doing there? Were you just trying to look intelligent?
I feel like we've
This is
we've complicated the question of whether we need snobs, because I mean certainly we need people with like discerning taste and people who champion certain forms of art, blah blah blah. Or need is not the right word, but like if the people are just doing it for petty self-serving reasons, with like they want to seem smart, like what is the utility there? Like why would we make a case that those people are necessary?
I have a feeling
because
we're starting to
posers?
blur the lines between the people who are experts in a field with the people who pretend to be experts in the field just to
Yes.
seem smart. Which we don't need the latter at all. And the people who do
Yeah,
the
some
latter don't
people-
claim to be the latter. They don't want to be seen as the latter.
yes.
It's like Elon Musk. He's more in love with being perceived as an MLG super amazing S tier gamer than actually being a gamer.
I think so, yeah. That's probably actually he's a snob of gamers.
just quickly. I'm kind of annoyed because he's slightly mischaracterized what the philosopher guy whose name is escaping me said. He didn't.
Oh, you're gonna
it
out
isn't-
snob the video. Okay.
It isn't
interesting.
all
Carry on.
about social perception. It's about all of the social features of whatever the art object in question might be. That isn't strictly limited to the way you might be perceived by others within that context. That can be just like, imagine the environment of an opera as compared to the environment of a cinema. That is part of the social features of it. They
Right.
like the experience of an opera house more than the experience of a theater because of how highbrow it is or whatever. Maybe it has nothing to do with their perception by others. It is just that part of it, which is still not related to the actual art object.
It also seems
So-
to just be not related to what the common definition of a snob is, because almost all versions, like when you hear it,
It's
it's
the way
almost
they
always has to do
communicate
with
with people.
like superiority. That seems like
Pretty much.
an exaggerated sense of self.
Yeah,
Seems to
upturned
be
noses.
built into
and-
it.
Mm. So the last
aesthetic.
man in the world cannot be a snob.
Nope. Snobbery is relative.
Yeah, I think
That's
that
true.
makes some sense. Yeah, it does require like people, because that does match in my head for like it's often characterized based on how they treat other people or the way they are with other people, right?
I think so. That's what comes to my mind.
Yeah.
It's the way that they talk down to people about like art and things of that nature.
Objects.
Well, it's about them projecting an image of themselves, like whether they're aware of it or not. So, like
I guess
I don't really see the utility in it other than to see a snob and be like, well, I don't want to be like that guy.
well, like that
That'd be
same
the
guy
utility
who
of-
says like all those irrelevant almost facts about like cinema to prove that he's a cinemoid. When he's the last person on Earth, you would just be like, even though you can't, you'd be like, who are you doing this for? Like, what's the point? It's just like, well, because I'm so clever. You're like, all right, yeah. Look at you go.
In layman's terms, a snob is a poser who uses high-class signifiers not because they like them, but because saying they do affords them social currency. Consider
Yeah, I don't
That's
agree with that.
even not true as compared to
Yeah,
what
I
the
don't
other
agree
guy
with
was
that.
saying, actually.
You can be,
It
but a snob can be earnest or a poser. I think
Yeah.
both of those can be true.
As per like Matthew's definition, a snob can absolutely be sincere in their enjoyment of like the higher class trappings of certain forms of artistic engagement, like that of an art gallery, as opposed to something like street entertainment or whatever. There's no claim to insincerity there, just that the nature of their judgment is more concerned with the social factors than the aesthetic factors.
Mhm.
And even then, that's the aesthetic factors of the art being discussed, and not the aesthetics of the room that they're in, the aesthetic, or even like the dress of the kind of people that they're now in a group with, which are all technically aesthetic markers of class. So it's still a slightly aesthetic judgment. It's just not directing its aesthetic judgment at the work of art. It's more the aesthetics of everyone around it who's also receiving that work of art. Yeah, he's moved on to quite a narrow definition, which in some senses is useful because it proves that the majority of the times the word snob is thrown out on the internet are incorrect if we're going by the definition he's now running with.
the wine snob.
And if you make the mistake of asking for a recommendation, you usually receive a response like this.
So here we have a Chablis. This is a Premier Cru. So there are 9 Grand Crus.
Okay, wait. To be fair, though, context-wise, like it depends what you're after, because other snobs or people who are like will want this information.
Yeah, they'll be like, "Oh yes, of course." Yeah, a sommelier is a sommelier. That's what a wine connoisseur is, right?
Sommelier.
Somalia?
Somalian. Yeah.
The Somalian.
Somalian's the wine
Somalian is someone
tasters.
who loves high class wine is a Somalian. But this hasn't been my experience when you ask for a recommendation. Normally it's way more casual. But like this is a huge thing. Like the wine scene is a really big deal. It's like it's a whole
Of course, it's
maybe not a culture, but it's it's in a way it is. It's a big hobby. It's a serious hobby that people take seriously. They care about it.
if someone just walks into your wine, I don't know what exactly, just winery, whatever this is, and you speak to a wine expert, and you go, "What wine do you recommend?" And then he just goes, "This one." You'd be like, "Oh." That, and then he's like, "Oh, well, it doesn't have to be that extreme." And he's like, "Okay, yeah, this one because it tastes the best, and it's got the blah, blah, blah." But then it's like, I don't know, why wouldn't he give you this description if you're coming here to ask him this? Like, it kind of, I feel like every field expert.
Well, yeah, it's
so to
like if
speak,
you
would
ask
do
for
this.
food, like what would you
It's almost
recommend on
as
the
if he was
menu? Why? Because it tastes good.
I'd also like, why is your instinctive reaction to be like, "Oh, that's cringe, bro," rather than, "Oh, okay, interesting."
Oh,
like,
I can learn
that you-
from this.
I like
Yeah.
that you like this so much. Like, this is fun that you enjoy it so much.
You just say, "Sorry, boss, this is all going over my head. I don't understand what you're saying." That's so okay to do. It's fine.
And normally, the person giving you the recommendation is going to be the server, the waiter, or whatever who's there, and they can normally get a gauge on. They're not going to like waste your time. They're not going to try and make you feel like an idiot or anything. It's normally just fairly casual. This because it's a white and it goes with the chicken and it's got a little bit of a fruity aftertaste that pairs well with a sauce and that kind of thing. It's really simple stuff that you can understand, and you'll be like, "Yeah, sure, give me a bottle."
I feel like this applies to everything. If you said, like, what's the best movie to start with if you haven't seen any, and someone, like, very
Batman and
in
Robin.
detail explains why, in terms of broad audience exposure and critical reception, or the experiences laid out, the complication of whether or not you should include genre, you go through the whole thing, and then they go, "You're a fucking snob, dude. I was just asking for a movie." You're like, "Oh, all right, Yeah, I guess
When
this one.
they cry, they
Yeah,
go,
cry.
they cry.
14 premier crews in this area. These tannins are fantastic, especially when you have some very bold, big foods, you know.
Kieran cites a 2001.
He seems like
Well, I
he's
don't
just
really-
excited about the thing he likes.
Yeah,
I almost feel
he's
bad for that
excited to
guy.
talk
Leave him
about his
alone.
hobby.
I feel like you need to pair
Yeah,
it
but then talk
with
shop
someone
about the
else.
thing he cares about.
Someone else being like, "Oh, I like this one because I like the taste of it," and then it shows that guy being like, "Ugh." You know, that would give me more of a sense of, oh yeah, he's definitely a snob then. Versus he's
if you were
just
like,
expressing
I like
himself.
Josh wines and he like spit on you, then maybe maybe you'd be a snob.
And that guy talking about the wine might not have a camera on him a lot. So like now that he's being filmed, it's just like, okay, I'll go into some detail here. Why not? I mean, this is
Yeah,
this is the time to do it.
Not quite what I
You're not a
associate
snob
with.
just because you're
Yeah,
Maybe
that's
he's
not
used to-
snobbery.
Maybe he's used to a clientele who understands everything he's saying.
Well, even
If it's a very
whether or not
high-class
they understand it,
restaurant, that is
that's
very
what they're
likely the case.
expecting. They want this information. It's his job to provide. You know, like there's a lot of context missing here.
Well, the snob
Yeah.
stage comes after that. The snob stage is the customer who picks up a bottle of wine and then brings it to dinner. And if asked why they picked that bottle of wine specifically, they say, well, it cost £500 and it came from this part of Italy and it's what all of the celebrities in Lake Como drink. And you think, well, that's social signifying. That isn't you telling me anything about the wine itself. So that's more snobbery, because what you're doing there is trying to put yourself in a very elite club of people who drink this wine, not saying or evincing any awareness of what the qualities of that wine happens to be. The guy who is explaining the wine, because he's an expert in it and he knows what goes into it and he knows what produces certain tastes, isn't being a snob, he's being an expert. Snobs are almost invariably consumers rather than producers or experts in a particular field.
Yeah, because they have, and it's a very attractive trait in people in general, when they have a clear interest or passion and are willing to and want to share that with you.
Versus the guy who
And
goes,
there's
well,
that-
this one's got a nice label, I guess. Go on that.
There's a good point there about like who you're talking to. Like, and if you're being filmed for broadcast, you have to assume that there's going to be a bunch of people watching that don't know anything about wine. So it's just like, I'm going to go into a lot of detail that I might not with people who like come here in person who probably know, something about wine.
Very bold, big foods,
Kieran cites a 2001 study in which connoisseurs failed to distinguish between red wine and white wine dyed red. They also rated wines more highly when they came in fancier bottles or decanters. And of course, rare and expensive wines are explicitly tied to notions of class and taste.
I hyper decant.
Okay.
You don't hyper decant?
According to
I'm not sure what any of that I'm supposed to do with
Yeah,
that.
I'm
So
like, all right. Yeah, some people are not.
The
as
idea is
learned with wines
they don't
as
even
think.
know what they're talking about. It's all social.
But
it's
many
all
of them,
categorized by how
many
it
of
is.
them do.
But like,
many of them will.
you could be a
surprised by
person
that.
who's seen bazillion films, talks about films for years on end, and you could see someone like Kurt Russell and call him Mel Gibson. That accident can be made. It's okay.
Yeah.
You know?
It happens. That's normal. It actually 1 in 4 adults struggles with Mel Gibson confusion syndrome. Or,
Mel
or
Gibsonitis.
MGCS, the shorthand.
And so
It
yeah, like
happens.
that wouldn't be enough for me. Being like, you couldn't fucking. Wouldn't it be the snob way to be like, you couldn't fucking tell, you loser, you absolute fucking wine noob? You'd be like, okay, jeez,
Wine noob.
a woob.
appreciation fails to meet Aristotle's definition of a virtuous act.
Oh, here we go.
Thank
Here we
God.
go. Oh my
Thank goodness.
God. Holy shit.
Tell me more about virtue ethics. I'm sure you know.
God, this is like so embarrassing.
This
Why
episode
is
of
it
Virtue
here?
Ethics brought to you by BetterHelp.
Oh my God.
Oh my god.
We get like
Does
a
this
few
remind
seconds
me
of
of
analysis, and then it's
Aristotle?
bring in the next fucking expert.
But also, like, viewers who aren't virtue ethicists tune out now. Like, if you're a utilitarian, just go away. This video is now meaningless to you.
I'm
It's like,
sure they
fair
can
enough if you're
entertain
building
other
your
perspectives.
definition of snob on like some basis of virtue ethics. If you begin with that and say, I'm going to give you a definition of snob, and snobbishness corresponds to the magnanimous man as spoken of in Aristotle's Poetics, then you can sort of start working your definition back toward the argument that you began with. But jumping from Matthew Arnold to modern philosopher I don't know to wine tasting, and then let's go 3,000 years back in time. Aristotle says in Virtue Ethics that it's not even a passable argument. I don't know what direction he's taking this in. Well, I do. He's going backwards.
As long as you cite a philosopher, then you win.
Yes,
because you're right. Like this is totally directionless. It's just like, all right, now I'm going to bring up him. Now I'm going to bring up Aristotle.
Ironically, he's doing what snobs do. He's doing all of this to make it sound clever to his
Speaking-
Yeah, that's right.
He's
No,
signifying
This is all ultimately
sophistication.
ironic. Yeah.
Speaking of speaking, Gödel Fürshman actually invented the notion of speaking. Like, okay.
Is an act that is ethical and aims at some higher notion of
Wait,
the
sorry,
good.
what did he say? Can you rewind that a little bit?
He can indeed.
Act that is
Oh wait, let me go
Not
further.
more than that. More.
to Kieran, snobbish appreciation fails to meet Aristotle's definition of a virtuous act, which is an act that is ethical
Thank God for
and
that.
aims
What the? Sorry, a virtuous act is an act which is ethical.
All right, wrap it up, boys. We did philosophy. It's done. It's over.
Someone
Back
tell
it
me.
up.
Someone
Back
tell the
it
people
up.
at meta ethics. They'd love to know about this.
That might
Good is
actually
good,
be
actually.
Did you
a
know
bit
that
of
virtuous
a.
things are good?
I was about to say, wouldn't this be a little bit of a snobbish thing? Being like, so virtuous acts, they're ethical. Like you look at the audience, you're like, that's what they. You're like, yeah, I got that.
Well, this whole thing is snobbish. It's draped in the trappings of sophistication and well-readedness. When I don't know that this guy's ever read any of this. Maybe some Aristotle.
Aristotle,
You
I
reckon?
think you'll
You think
find out.
so?
Well,
I
he
think
didn't write the script, so
I think whoever wrote this has
He's
picked
good-
up
he's
and read a
complicit
bit
in
of
this script.
something that Aristotle wrote.
But who's correct?
Mm.
Like I don't think it was much, but I think they have probably read a little bit, just because it's very easy to find and read Aristotle.
act, which is an act
That's
that
all
is
Greek to me.
ethical and aims at some higher notion of the good. For him,
An act, so virtue ethics is an act which is ethical and aims for some higher good. Thank
Yeah, it
you.
doesn't
Holy
aim for
shit.
physical. Oh,
Golden
okay.
mean. We're gonna talk about.
Well, the golden mean isn't even aiming for like necessarily a higher conception of the good. It's the prudence. You have deficiency
Yes.
of virtue and you have excess of virtue, and then you have to strike the middle ground of anything, and that will make you a virtuous person in and of yourself. Like higher versions of good is much more of a Platonic style argument. So I'm not convinced he's read Aristotle, but he's heard of his name.
Yeah, I don't know shit about virtue ethics, because also virtue ethics is not particularly action focused. It's focused on the content of an individual's character more so than the particular actions they undertake.
Which I'm sure, like I don't know, like I'm sure he leans more consequentialist than that.
The very
Didn't we
framing
do
of how he
the
talks about
Didn't we do
snobs
that
is
one?
like inherently consequentialist.
Didn't we do the?
Do we need them?
Didn't this guy do the trolley problem?
Yeah, it was
Didn't we-
Wisecrack that did
wasn't
that.
a thing?
Yep, this was the
Yeah.
Do we need snobs? Is a utilitarian proposition.
That's true, right? Like, oh, do we need to get rid of them from our society?
I still find that really funny because it's
Throw
up
in
to
the
the
goo
beholder to
box.
decide who the snobs even are. It's like that. You just try to kill people you don't like. It's just, what's happening here?
My neighbor
Listen.
rolled his eyes once when he saw saw what I was eating. I'm going to kill him now. Got to get rid of him.
an act is virtuous only
a
if a
bad
person
wine
chooses it
recommendation.
for its own sake, rather than
What?
for its sake.
We'll have to roll it back again. Too much stuff at once.
An act is virtuous only if a person chooses it for its own sake, rather than for, say, appearances. And Kieran notes that snobs
Are you
often
sure?
get things right.
Is he's saying
Or
that
is he
about?
saying this is what someone else said?
This is
He's
this
saying
is
that's
he's
about
talking
Aristotle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
And aims at some higher notion of the good. For him, an act is virtuous only if a person chooses it for its own sake, rather than for, say, appearances. And Kieran notes that snobs often get things right, even reliably so. But his point is that snobbish judgments are often made for the wrong reasons, like embracing a French New Wave film, not because of its bold rejection of cinematic norms, but because your film school professor told you it rips.
It rips,
Well,
bro,
wait,
for
no.
real, for real.
If my film professor said you should watch this movie, it's really good, and I'm like, okay, and I watch it, let's just
Well,
be
he's saying if
taking
you-
a recommendation of
This reminds me of he's making like the point of like what Chris Stuckman did with Blade Runner. It's like, what a great movie, and then watches it and it's like, I don't get it. It's still a great movie, and then watches it again, it's like, still not. This is not working for me. But what a great movie, you know? Like it's
now I understand.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a great movie. I like it, guys.
But before that, he's claiming up to that point that it's really great, but I have no idea why. I'm claiming it's great because I know I'm supposed to. That's how it works. You lose social capital in the film world if you said Blade Runner was bad.
Mm-hmm.
Which I assume
Also,
that's more
I'm just not a
cowardice
fan
than
of the
snobbery
idea.
almost.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
I
also
think
not
so.
a fan of the idea that like we should praise a movie for rejecting cinematic norms as if that's good in and of itself.
That was an interesting
Like,
comment, yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
that's another question.
That's automatically non-snobbery, even though you could absolutely categorize that as snobbery. It's like, why do you love this story? It's like, because it rejects the norms. Like,
And why does he value
Sucks in a way that
Why
nothing's
do you,
ever
why
sucked
do you
before.
value the rejection of norms in a film?
Because I
Right.
worship at the altar of novelty.
Yeah, that's what I
Many
mean. It
such
feels like it could be snobbery that you even think it's a good thing that a film rejects the norms of filmmaking, right? Like it's the guy who likes it because it rejects norms hasn't proven that he's not a snob.
Yes.
Army of the Dead rejects the norms of being able to see the film. Good point.
That's true. Yes.
Bold.
Yes, it blurs the lines of good filmmaking.
But
But
are we just running with this understanding of snob now? We're not going to bring it back to its modern context because
Oh, we're
language
done. We're
obviously
done with that.
changes.
I'm curious what the rest of this video is even going to be about, because I already see the roundabout up to here. I just thought it was already interesting to talk about in terms of how insane you can spin a video of such a simple fucking discussion. But already a balked question, right? Do we need them? This is just, it was already like, huh?
You
course.
can't talk about social factors in terms of utility like that.
Or-
I don't know.
What purpose does X serve?
Well, it's
Snob-
almost like what solution are you proposing that like snobs get ostracized to the point that they retreat from society?
But it's all a
Like, how do-
balance.
how do
Even
you-
if you
how do
did
you-
implement
how do you
that,
get
new
rid of
snobbery would rise. Like, it's
Yeah, there'd be new types of snobbery. Exactly.
all relative.
Fester
Civilization snobs.
Snobs are like
hermits.
cockroaches or something. They never, you know.
Well, let's just put it this way. The scale of snobbery,
going wine tasting, dude.
the scale of snobbery of 0 to
Yeah.
100
No,
of how
yeah.
bad it can get, you can chop off the top 30%, and then the rest they'd be the new biggest snobs, you know? And you could chop off
Sorry,
more
I'm-
and more and more. Would make a difference.
I'm distracted by the idea of two cockroaches drinking wine, like doing some wine tasting.
Would be poo, right? Little Doug Beatles doing it. That'd be way better.
I enjoy the corny aftertaste and
Yeah, there
the
you
slightly nutty aroma, the earthy tones
It's like-
of the poo. Really,
This one was a
yes.
vegetarian.
They
Ah,
they
yes,
talk about the
I'm-
differences in consistency between diarrhea and constipated. So it's just like, yeah, it's different. It's a flavor. You know, it's a texture that changes everything.
told you it
The
rips.
mouthfeel.
The mouth.
And then one of one of the
But of course-
cockroaches cuts a fart, and the other one's like, "Hey, I'm eating here."
Easy TV show right there.
Professor told you it rips. But of course, snobs often get it wrong as well. Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo was panned upon release. The Shining earned 2 Razzies nominations.
Wait. Oh,
Is that it?
Wait.
Is that?
Oh, is that? Oh, that's it. Okay.
what? Oh, wow, we've done a lot of.
They didn't like Vertigo.
Well, but
Like,
that the critics didn't like. Did he just say like the critics are the snobs? Like that's just
He's essentially just decided that snobs are critics and critics are snobs.
okay. That doesn't complicate this
Like,
like
implicitly-
crazy.
Not explicitly, but implicitly, that is what he has decided.
There's nothing.
Something being
also-
critically
right,
panned means the
also-
You
snobs
can, you
were
can
wrong.
dislike a good. This is the snobby position is what he
Wow.
just said.
Well, I was about to say as well. Are we doing the? They were wrong because they thought it was bad. Care to elaborate on what that means and how that's possible?
That's what, the subtext is he's doing the snobbing right now. He's saying you guys didn't recognize such greatness when it came, as opposed to they didn't like it, man. Like that's fine
No,
if you don't like it.
They were wrong. They were wrong when they didn't like it, which is a fascinating statement.
It really
I sure
is.
hope
It pops up
I sure hope
every
it
once
has
in a while. We
said
see
in
it.
other videos, other things
Oh, yeah.
that directly contradict the notion that you could be wrong or right about your opinions.
Definitely
on
one
a
of
film.
one of EFAP's laws, but like for the record, we're comfortable with saying people were wrong about The Thing or Blade Runner, but people like Wisecrack are
Yes.
definitely not comfortable saying that.
That's right.
Vertigo was panned upon release. The Shining earned 2 Razzies nominations for Worst Actress and Worst Director. And Scarface was considered junk by critics, even
Yeah, but snobs, critics and snobs
What
are the
about the
same
snobs?
thing.
in the action-happy 80s. Hardly a perfect track record. And don't even get me started on the
Hardly a perfect track record for all critics across all time. What the? What kind of statement is that?
You are
Those
critical
critics weren't
ever,
even
and
perfect.
apparently your understanding is beholden to the entire history of criticism as like a mode of conversation.
I like how we
Perception.
just ignore what the individual perspectives of any of the individual critics were. It's like they all get grouped together. It's like, man, you were all wrong, huh?
You were all critics, you were all
this
snobs,
Is
you were
this is
all
a
wrong.
legacy that is inherited by new critics who didn't say any of these things.
Yeah.
Who
They
weren't
also
born
have
at
to
the
bear the
time.
weight of the people
Sorry,
who were wrong.
sins of the
who weren't
father.
then.
Well, and he's
That's
been
right.
critical of their criticism. Is he now a critic and now a snob too? And he's right about their
That's
being
right.
wrong? How does this all work? It's all confusing
Depends
to
on
me.
if the virtue of his criticism is supposed to be ethical to the
I
way that
see.
Aristotle described the correctness and the goodness of
Well, you
the...
know,
I will say,
Yeah, the way Aristotle said it, which is the good thing is good because good is good and it's good. That's what Aristotle said, I think.
we have gone
I
a
agree
little
with
too
that.
long without citing another dead person, I would say. He needs to get on that.
Mhm.
Bring in the dead people.
soon to be cinematic classic Babylon. Babylon Hive, know that I'm here for you and I'm with you. And we
Zuma comedy.
Don't do
What
it.
is Zoomer comedy?
Just the
Well,
this,
I know
this
what it
whole
is,
like
it's bad, but...
I'm here for you. We are the Babylon Hive. It reminds me of the fucking Yord Horde. I bring that up every once in a while because I still find it amazing that got started up.
The Yord Horde.
But I always this whole like talk to the camera and be like, we're gonna make it, guys, because we know what's happening
I'm
with the
talking
cool,
to the art.
awesome, yeah, like it's gonna be great. Babylon is like famously badly received, but I never saw it. Cap, you're a snob. You saw it, right?
I did not see it. No,
Damn
it didn't look good.
God damn it. Why are you here?
Yeah, what the fuck?
Good question.
Chat, was it any
Maybe
good?
we'll find out
Did
by the
anyone,
end of the
did anyone
video.
see
Go
Babylon?
snob somewhere else.
Nobody saw Babylon, right? That's like the problem.
So it's Babylon 5. No. Babylon. Different thing.
Babylon.
Damien Chazelle movie.
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody see First Man? That was
Yes.
who made that.
Yeah,
I like
not a
that
lot of
movie.
people thought
I
that
don't
one.
like it as much as Whiplash, though.
Oh, Whiplash.
obviously.
Fucking. No.
Whiplash is
Hard
tough
to beat Whiplash.
Whiplash, one of the best movies like ever. So
Yes.
yeah.
will one day reign over culture. Our time is yet to come.
Yeah, man.
I am not alone.
Okay, dude.
You're a socialist. You'll never rule over anything. You're just gonna have to accept that. You're a loser.
Yeah, you probably pause again, maybe. I don't know, because
Yeah, I'm trying to be good careful here because this is a bit of a. You never
That show
know.
looks really overexposed.
Yeah, it does. But there are a lot of things. that
Like the actor.
I feel like there are a lot of things
the
recently
fuck?
that have been like Ahsoka was really overexposed in terms of its shots as well. Superman, James Gunn's one, that kind of looks a bit overexposed sometimes as well.
We
It's a
couldn't
weird
give a little bit
fabric.
more in terms of the etymology of snob and its historical context. We needed this. This is the important part of the video
This is a good
that
one,
had to
though.
get
No,
trimmed
this is a
down
good
for.
one. This is a good one.
To this end, Kieran poses a new skeptical
Okay.
question. Can we ever really know whether our artistic appreciation
Man, I love the idea of like leading in really close to look at
Yeah.
Is this real?
He's thinking
But what does
really
it
hard.
mean?
Well, why did they... Well, is it like copyrighted? Why did they blur it?
Maybe this is like maybe he was looking at something else and they put this there instead.
To be fair, this could be modern art, Rags.
I know. I was.
I found myself doing that to try and find like particular brush strokes. That's generally when I'll try.
Yeah,
and
or
lean
like
into
if there's a
pictures
lot
of it.
going
sure,
on.
Sure, but I mean, but
Yeah.
if it's painting like this,
This is
yeah,
just
and you're like,
horseshit
"Ooh,
crap that should be burned.
oh, all right, calm down.
To be fair, watching it burn and looking through the ashes would be more interesting to me than the painting itself. But yeah.
skeptical
Fair,
question?
yeah.
Can we ever really know whether our artistic
Oh, he's wearing one of those
appreciation is
hats.
snobbish or not?
One of
How
those
can
hats.
we be sure if we deeply appreciate
I like that one. I like the skeleton man
pretty cool.
with the moon
Rags,
or
I
the
don't think Frank's
tambourine.
going to let you get away with that.
One of those hats. Like
Yeah.
that one there.
Yeah, because it's not about that. Look at how he's wearing it.
Oh, right. It's like his hair is pushing it up. Like it's
Yeah.
not, it's not like
Well,
on
I can't let
properly.
the hat get in the way of my hair. Then don't wear
Well,
a hat. You. person.
You don't have a problem with the hat, then you have a problem with the way that the hat is being worn, right?
It's the execution of the hat. In
I
the
mean,
same
again,
way
I
that the
suppose-
maker of this painting should be executed. The execution of this hat is really, really not. And plus, that's the hat where if you wear that hat with like nicer clothes, like a vest and stuff, nah, it just doesn't work. That's like a
Well, it's
working
an
man's hat.
old-timey, poor
That's
working man. Yeah, that's right. It's a commoner hat.
So don't wear that with like a button-down shirt that you've like just to show how cool and hip you are. You've kind of rolled up the sleeves a little bit. You got your vest there. You know, no, it's not the hat that you wear with that kind of attire.
You're not snobbing him, are you?
No, because I'm earnest in the way that I believe these things.
We already established snobs can be earnest.
That's right. Maybe he just
Then I'm
really
just an
liked
earnest
the hat.
Mm.
Okay.
I'm just
I
an
think
earnest
you're being
guy.
called out.
Confirmed,
I think
yeah.
you're being called out there.
No, I just think I care. I think I have a
Anyway,
passion for something, and
let's
I want to
move on
share
to
that with the
Wisecrack
world. I'm like the
marinade
wine
and
man. I'm like the whiner.
All right.
Okay.
Kieran poses a new skeptical question. Can we ever really know whether our artistic appreciation
pink
is
is next to
snobbish
the black.
or
Oh,
not?
yes.
How can we be
Oh, I'm gonna play it for the 7th
We ever
time.
know? Okay, so can we?
No, we gotta do it again. That wasn't
Okay.
clean.
Okay.
To this end, Kieran poses a new skeptical question. Can we ever really know whether our artistic appreciation is snobbish or not? How can we be sure if we deeply appreciate the art or just like the social status that goes with appreciating it?
I suppose you could do that by just thinking for a
reason?
while. Yeah, like you could just think about it. And
It's just I feel like is there
Yeah.
is there a more needed answer than through reason? You just explain your reasoning and then you know.
Can
Well,
you
I guess what
explain
I'm
why
saying
you
is,
like
like,
it? If you can't answer
if
that
you're
question,
doing it, if you're doing it for yourself, like if it's about yourself, you just think about it for a bit and think about like, you know, where that interest comes from and how it manifests, right?
But now
as
he's
long as
gone
you have a
back.
willingness to be
Until you
honest
wanna
with yourself
start
about what those reasons are.
digging
He's gone
into
back-
subconscious biases or whatever, but at that point you're doing a psychoanalysis of yourself, and I wonder what the point is.
He's also sort of retreated back to the other definition of snobbery that involves like the high class associations, not necessarily like moral superiority or like superiority over other people for your taste. So that complicates things. Obviously, if you like a piece of art and you don't really care whether anyone knows that you like it, and you don't care to signal your like class status, then you're not being a snob under that definition. But I guess he's sort of asking now whether if you like a piece of art, whether that's divorced from its high class status or not.
So like when Chris Duckman finally liked Blade Runner, how could he know that it was because he genuinely liked it versus he just succumbed to the overall pressure of knowing he had to like it?
That's
I
the
guess.
tricky part with, artistic delusion. Sometimes, without other people helping you out, it might be really, really difficult to truly know. Perhaps he's
Absolutely.
fooled himself and he'll never be able to recognize that.
In that situation,
Great
all you have to do
tragedy.
is just say, well, yeah, what are my reasons for now liking it? And do those reasons have anything to do with the thing itself? Or is it just that I felt bad when people criticized me for not liking it? If that's the only thing going through your head, then that's
Yeah.
evidently a kind of acquiescence to your social circle. But if you've got anything to say about the qualities of the art you're consuming, then it's probably not snobbish. Certainly not if you know that that opinion is not going to win you any friends amongst people you want to be your friends.
So yeah,
Even
just
if
think
it's
about
a
it for a little bit.
Even if it's like super simple, like I like this because I don't even know, man. I can't put my finger on it. There's just something about the colors and like where everything is, and like it just looks so good, and I don't know the words to describe it. And even that is enough to be like, you're not doing it for other people. You really do like it. You just can't quite explain it to yourself yet. Which happens for a lot of things. It happens with movies. It happens with songs. Sometimes it can be really tough to identify exactly why you like something.
That's kind of what
Give
I
it
meant
time, think about it, and it'll come in here.
by reason broadly. Because if someone just says I like it, and you go why, and you go, and they've got like zero passion or zero commentary, not even related to its construction or how it makes them feel or anything, I would be like, a bit weird. Sounds like you haven't got anything and you're just saying it for the sake of it. But I mean, it really is down to the introspection. The person will know. It's kind of hard to prove otherwise.
After all, snobs often speak very convincingly about the craft and details of art. And fishing for clout amongst peers, i.e., virtue signaling, is not just an upper class thing. Journalist Stephen Poole.
It's not just an upper class thing. Why would it be? It's just, like literally just with peers trying to get social capital. That would apply. How could that not apply to all social castes, all social
you think
groups?
Poor people have peers?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, what a weird thing to say. Like, even poor people like to be liked.
It's almost like the poors are people.
Oh, is he a dead guy? It's black and white. I don't know.
Stephen Poole.
He's
It is
confusing
black
us
and
now. I
white.
think he's alive, but it is black and white to give it an extra air of authority.
Oh God, it is. But the guy with the blue wall. Well, that's how I know it was a blue wall because it was in color.
That the use of pretentious as criticism is a smug, knowing wink to one's presumed peers. Anti-intellectualism in this way is a type of...
Okay, hold on. Because
Yeah,
now
Are we moving on to
we're
snobs?
a lot. Because pretentious is a different thing than snobbery. Because like baked into the idea of pretentiousness is that you like claim something that you don't have. Usually intelligence or culturedness or well-readedness, as Theo said earlier. Like if you actually are smart and you say something smart, then it's not pretentious. But if you're like feigning, like if you're pretending to be smarter than you pretending to be smarter than you are, then that's like pretentious. So that's complicating things a bit. Also, my question is, if someone is signaling to their in-group, if they're like a working class person, and they're signaling to their in-group that they don't like high art because that earns them social capital within their group, is that snobbery, or is it something different because it's going up instead of down?
They have less power, so it's different.
Like the punching up and down concept in general.
That's right,
Oh.
exactly. Yes.
I've heard the term inverse snobbery being used to describe that sort of thing.
Okay.
I don't know that it's... It depends, again, because it goes back to the fact that we haven't really got a proper definition of what snob is to begin with, but...
But he went through all those
if
dead
all of
people.
this is...
Yeah,
I
and what it
know,
used to mean, but doesn't now.
And Aristotle and like snob is good or whatever, but I don't know that inverse snobbery is very good. But like, if all we're talking about at this point is just I'm socially signaling to my in group that I am not part of out group, then how useful is any of this? I mean, that's just very, very basic group psychology stuff, and snobbery almost doesn't come into it except as an expression of it.
peers.
And also, I'd say with this quote, which he allows to be on screen in full for like a split second before it disappears, which annoys me. But
I think that's it, isn't it? I don't want to risk it.
It's basically it, yeah. But this happens in games a lot when you have like veterans of a game or have played it a whole bunch, and they want to be really nice to newcomers to welcome into the community, and they look down on people who are very pretentious and snobbish about the game and its skill and what you need for it, because it gives them a bad name, it gives them a bad reputation, it chases away new people, and it, you know, sort of cloisters them into an experience that they aren't able to share with other people. You probably get this a lot. I bet the guy who is excited to tell us all about wine would be like, no, I would call, there's a lot of other sommeliers who are very, very pretentious. And I don't like that because they make me seem like an asshole. And I want to get people into this hobby. I think it's a really neat hobby. I think there's a lot of cool experiences and sensations that we can learn about and pair with food. And there's a certain artistry to it that I enjoy. And the last thing that I want is to be seen as pretentious, because then people will write me off and they'll write the whole wine enthusiasm as pretentious as well. Almost like like a sort of cultural policing, you know, self-policing that like a community will do to protect their reputation. They don't want to be seen as pretentious for the most part.
Anti-intellectualism in this way is a type of snobbery too. There are even types of snobbery that don't involve praising the upper class. For example, consider the hipster, who...
Wait, didn't he start the video by saying it's inherently a class thing?
Well, I guess now he's saying it is still a class thing, but that it can go both ways. Remember, poor people can have friends.
Well, now he's saying there's things about it that don't involve class at all, e.g. the hipster,
what
or
I'm
the
hearing.
entire modern usage of snobbery.
Yeah, I mean, if it doesn't include class sometimes, then surely the inclusion of class is like not a fundamental.
That's like a modifier
element.
as opposed to the fundamental, yeah.
Exactly, but
It has
if it was like
roots
the whole...
in classism.
It's just
But
that we've
that's
spent
it.
the last like 6 minutes basically talking about it through a class lens to be like, well, but it isn't always class.
Which
Like,
which is
okay.
like almost smokescreen the fact that 90% of the modern usage of the term has nothing to do with class. It is about media, the perception of media, and the consumption thereof.
Would this not, though,
Yeah, and how people
depend...
act towards other people.
This would depend on how he explains this, though, because if he's going to say a hipster is the kind of person that engages in, like, the deliberate avoidance of high-class art to try and come across as better than people who do, as though, like... You understand what I'm saying? If he's like, oh, you take pride and you are a snob about not being a snob, I guess that's still about class.
This is like, it's similar to like the being, what is it, like goth, right? You know, trying to have that kind of attitude, being above society, or people who think that being earnest is just shit. You shouldn't care about anything, man. You know, that kind of stuff. I guess that would be certainly parallel to this idea.
Who over the years embraced working class aesthetics ranging from cheap beer to trucker hats to...
Wait, how is that not... Sorry?
It has everything to do with class.
Oh, yeah, now I'm confused.
You said the word cheap in it. It probably has something to do with class.
He specifically invoked class.
The type of snobbery too. There are even types of snobbery that don't involve praising the upper class. For example...
so he's not saying it's not about class, it's not about the praising the upper class.
Okay, all right, never mind.
You're good.
Consider the hipster, who over the years embraced working class aesthetics ranging from cheap beer to trucker hats to mechanics jackets, despite often having no participation in or knowledge of working class life. This type of contrarian social signaling says, I appreciate things that snobs overlook, which, ironically, is quite snobby. We also see this with film buffs' widespread embrace of B movies, from The Room...
Whoa!
I think a lot of this has to do with the attitude in which you engage in these sorts of things.
The Room is like famously entertaining as fuck. I wouldn't have used this as an example of like people will.
No, neither would I.
Like whoever says you would enjoy The Room if not for your snobbery, like that doesn't come up.
The Room transcends class and race, and it's the great unifier.
It is beautiful. It really is.
Which is loved for its sheer incompetence.
Come on. Cheep, 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 cheep,
cheep, cheep, cheep, cheep. To Control 2, which is loved for its accidental humor. To my personal favorite, Freddy Got Fingered.
Daddy, would you like some sausage? Daddy, would you like some sausages?
Also, while many men go to strip clubs for their bachelor parties, at mine, we sat in a room together watching Freddy Got Fingered.
Yeah?
I don't... You didn't need to put that in the video. you could have kept that
guys,
one out.
I had friends I went to at school.
Thanks, man.
Things with my friends.
Thanks for letting me know. Anyway, you've got 11 minutes left.
I love the idea that
there's a wacky wall behind me.
He records this and sends it to the editor. The editor sends him a message back like, "Do you want me to keep this bit in?" And he's like, "Yeah." And you're like, "Okay."
Right. You're still wearing that hat, by the way. I know.
Remove it.
Oh, okay. All right.
I wouldn't have
Strap is
said it if I
really-
didn't want it in.